Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 26.3 Beta 2 and iOS 26.3 Public Beta 2 have been out for over a week at this point, and iOS 26.2 has been out for over a month. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26.3 Beta 2 is out. What's new video. We'll talk about the latest Apple news, we'll talk about some features, and we'll talk about the overall experience. Not just my experience, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page. You'll see at the time of this video, there's over 11,000 votes and 146 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the experience is like for most of us, so be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, if you're someone that's been using Apple Fitness Plus, we've seen quite a few changes lately, and it's now available in Japan as of this past Tuesday. Apple is rapidly expanding availability of the service to many countries, where it recently launched in 28 new countries, so it continues to expand around the world, and maybe with this expansion we could see more features roll out very, very soon. Much of the United States, from the Midwest to the South to the East in the US, is bracing for a large snowstorm. But Apple's weather app seems to be predicting huge snowfalls, which probably aren't accurate. According to the New York Times, Apple is only pulling data from one weather model instead of many that meteorologists use to predict and calculate totals. Some have gone as far as to say that they think the app is a disaster for the weather enterprise. So this is something I've never really paid too much attention to. It's not always right, but neither is the weather, so it's hard to say what's specifically accurate. Hopefully these aren't the totals for most people, and most of the United States is hopefully spared from a huge storm. But we'll have to wait and see, and if you're in one of these areas, as I am, I hope you stay safe. John Ternus is now in charge of both hardware and software design teams at Apple, as it seems Apple is getting ready to possibly make him a CEO. According to Bloomberg, John Ternus was placed in charge of design at the end of 2025. It seems pretty clear that Ternus is getting ready to be CEO, but no exact time is there, and so far there's no news of Tim Cook stepping down. Hopefully these changes, combined with the recent head designer of iOS changing, puts iOS back on top for stability, thoughtful user interface, and reliability. But we'll have to wait and see if John Ternus becomes the CEO and when that's actually said to take place. Now, we know that Apple is working with Google on a Gemini-based version of Siri that's said to be coming with iOS 26.4 in the near future, but it will be a custom version for Apple and run on their own private cloud compute servers. This will have some general functionality I've mentioned before, such as answering questions, preparing notes, booking travel, possibly telling stories, and even having an emotional support AI. These will most likely be seen in iOS 26.4 betas, probably in a couple weeks, but this isn't the big change. Siri is about to level up in a big way with iOS 27, according to Mark Gurman. Apple is said to be overhauling Siri with iOS 27, and it will carry across to other operating systems such as macOS 27. This is said to be a full-fledged chatbot in direct competition with the likes of ChatGPT. The internal name of the chatbot is Campos, and according to Gurman, it will likely be powered by Gemini, but this time running on Google's TPU processors and cloud infrastructure. This is much more powerful than what Apple has, so they'll be running it directly on their own software and hardware, and we'll have to wait and see what they do with that, as they'll probably announce it at WWDC in June. Typically, WWDC is around the second week of June. We'll hear more about that within the coming months, but usually in the second week of June, that's the first time we'll see the next version of iOS, where it's expected to bring stability and basically system changes with Siri and a few other things, but not a huge overhaul like we've had in the past. So maybe we'll see much more refinement, and I really hope we do at this point. For those of you that have used things such as ChatGPT and Gemini with a chatbot, do you find this to be more helpful, or would you rather just have Siri do everything and be less chatbot-like? Let me know in the comments below what you think. The App Store is about to show more ads when you start to search, and this is set to take place in March, as I mentioned late last year, where Apple updated some of their policies and they'll implement more ads like we have here. I searched for Minecraft, but you see an ad for add-on skins and texture packs. You'll see more and more of this starting in March with more ads throughout your search options. So this is something that many people don't like, but as far as developers go, I think it's good for them if they can advertise here, but it's just questionable how many ads are necessary. One is fine with me, but if this is plastered with ads, I think that will annoy a lot of people. But let me know what you think of that as well. Apple has invited some people to Los Angeles next week for what is expected to be the new Creator Studio releasing on the 28th. They're said to get their hands on it, and some have suggested we could see new MacBooks as well, but we don't know for sure. This would be a great time to show off a new Pro Display XDR or Studio display, along with an M5 Max or M5 Ultra processor as well. So maybe we'll see that as soon as next week, but there's no guarantees, but we know that people are getting together, probably to take a look at the new Creator Studio. Now, within iOS 26.3, there are not a ton of new features. Some of them I've shown before, where you can go into your settings, go to General, go to the bottom, go to Transfer or Reset iPhone, and you have the option to transfer to Android. I haven't tested this out yet, as I want to make sure it's really stable before I start transferring things such as my eSIM over to an Android phone, so I'll have to wait for a future update before I give that a try. But let me know if you'd like to see that as well. Also, there's new features, some I mentioned before. If you go into privacy and security, for example, then you go to locations, scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a new option where it says weather wallpaper under weather. So again, something new, very minor, but something they've added. Also within notifications, they removed something that was here from beta 1, no longer necessary, I guess. We might see that in the future. And then also we could get RCS encryption. Now we don't know if this is coming for sure, but it seems to be in the code, or at least hinted at by carrier bundle updates. So this is something hopefully that will launch with iOS 26.3. Now, I've heard from quite a few people who've said that their alarms are not working with iOS 26.2 and even iOS 26.3. This can be within reminders with the new urgent reminder option where it can set an alarm, or just be the general clock alarms overall. So this is something that seems to be a bug that is changing the alarm sound setting to none. So make sure if you're having that issue, or maybe just check it in general before you go to sleep, go into your clock app, go to your alarms, and then whether or not you have a sleep-wake alarm or just a regular alarm, go into it and make sure that the sound is set on something that you want it to alarm with. So if it is set to none, of course it won't alarm. So make sure that you have that set up with some sort of sound there. Again, the same is true under sleep and wake up. So make sure that you have a sound set here so that something is alarming when it's set to. So make sure that's there, and let me know if it's automatically turned off for you, switch to none or something like that. There's some app updates this week to talk about as well. 1Password has released a new anti-phishing warning feature when you go to paste a password. So if you're not using Apple's built-in password app, 1Password is a great option, or sometimes just to have multiple apps. But basically, if you go to paste a password in a website it doesn't recognize that could have a phishing link in it, it won't let you paste it and will give you a warning about it. I think this is a great way to help keep you a little bit more secure. It's pretty simple and should just let you know that when you paste a password into a website that doesn't look familiar, it just wants you to double check. When it comes to Threads this week, if you use Threads instead of maybe X, or maybe you use both like I do, Threads has apparently overtaken X for daily usage. Threads is now up to 141.5 million daily users, where X is sitting at around 125 million. According to SimilarWeb, they've taken stats on this, and supposedly Threads has a lot more users now. Let me know which one you prefer, whether it's Threads, X, or something else. Also, if you're someone that uses WhatsApp, there's a nice update coming to the web very soon where you'll finally be able to use video and voice calls directly on the website. There's some information about this on WA Beta Info. If we scroll down here, you can see what it looks like, and it's the web version of this where you'll be able to use video and audio calls as well. So this is a feature that looks like it's coming in the near future, but it's not available yet. When it comes to the next iPhone, we of course got a new design with the iPhone 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max, and we've used the dynamic island for some time. But this week there were quite a few different rumors talking about the overall dynamic island, camera placement, and more, where it was said originally that the iPhone 18 Pro series would get rid of the dynamic island since Apple developed some under-display Face ID sensors and maybe would move the camera to the left or leave it in the center, but it seems like it's just going to shrink the dynamic island overall. So based off more recent information, some have suggested some different sizes, but it looks like it's basically just going to be a shrunken version of the dynamic island, and it's going to stay in place. So we'll have to see what happens with this. I'm not sure I prefer either or, but I do like the symmetry of having it in the center. Having it off to the left would definitely bother me, I think, but you could still use the dynamic island features expanding out of that area. But let me know if you'd prefer maybe just a hole punch display with a camera or a smaller dynamic island. When it comes to releases this week, while Apple's launching the Apple Creator Studio on 1/28 in the United States or around the world, so you'll be able to try out Logic Pro, Pages, Numbers, all of those things in one with Pixelmator and all of the latest AI updates and more. So that should be available, and let me know if you'd like a separate video about that. I'll certainly be using it myself with Final Cut Pro, editing videos like this, but let me know if you're planning to pick it up, try it out, or something else. Apple also released new firmware for the Magic Keyboard this week. So if you're using a Magic Keyboard with an iPad Pro with an M4 or M5 or an iPad Air with an M3, you should have a new update for your keyboard this week. We don't know what it does, but it does install automatically, just like your AirPods or maybe other devices such as AirTags and other updates that we get from time to time. So we did get some update this week, but again, we have no idea what it does, whether it's battery improvements when it's connected to your iPad or usage or just general input. But again, I wish Apple would tell us and give us more thorough notes. One update we've been waiting for is iOS 26.2.1. Apparently MacRumors has seen it in their analytics. Typically when that happens, we get it within a week or two, so we could see it maybe early next week, or maybe not at all. Apple could have canceled it, we don't know that for sure, but with iOS 26.3 being probably just a week or two away, I would expect probably a 26.2.1 to be canceled unless they need to push it out before Creator Studio. However, we could see iOS 26.3 RC or Beta 3 as soon as Monday or Tuesday, with a public release, if we do see the RC, as soon as the 2nd. So we don't have exact dates until we know how many more versions there are, but if there's 3 versions like we had last year with iOS 18.3, then we would have the release probably around the 9th. But if this week we have the RC, then we could have it around the 2nd. But again, Apple hasn't said any of this publicly. When it comes to the AirPods Pro 3 experience, it seems like they're generally pretty good. Connectivity is great this week. Everything's opening quickly like you would expect. And battery life has been okay, but I've had some odd issues, specifically today when I was using them. The right earpod, or AirPod rather, wasn't charging properly. So I had to place it separately in here, make sure it started charging, and then it finally charged to where it should be. But for whatever reason, sometimes the earbuds don't charge properly from side to side. Whether that's a contact issue internally or not, I don't know. But either way, it seems like it's fixed at this point. Other than that, they've been working pretty well. I've used them with my iPhone, my iPad, as well as my Mac when editing, and even Vision Pro, and had no issues whatsoever. So it seems like they've finally sorted out the firmware, but let me know if you're still having issues. When it comes to the iOS 18.7.3 experience, I didn't want to talk about it too much, and you'll see I have a low battery here, but this version is running very smoothly on just about every phone that has it installed. Many people are not switching away from it because they find it very stable. However, I do wish Apple would allow everyone to upgrade to 18.7.3 now, even though they've taken that away. That would help with security and make sure people have security updates installed and just can use their phones like they expect. At this point, some people just don't want to upgrade, and I definitely think this should be a choice for us to actually decide if we want to upgrade the older phones. Just keep pushing security updates to them, of course, for another year or so that people can utilize it if they don't want the new liquid glass look. But again, that's subjective, and some people think they should be forced to update. When it comes to iOS 26.2, well, I've been using it full-time on the iPhone Air lately. It's actually been a pretty decent experience with the exception of a few things. For example, it's much smoother overall than previous updates, but there is occasional stutter from time to time, even on the latest processors. Sometimes I'll wake it up, and then it will just stutter and just be slow for a few seconds, even after it's been turned on for a long time. Animations are generally smooth, but there's still some issues from time to time. The widget panel stutters for some people, and the top complaints this week is basically display and ProMotion with lag on older devices, specifically iPhone 16 Pro and older, where sometimes when you scroll it feels less than 60 Hertz or maybe even 30 Hertz, but it's very smooth on the latest devices. Thermal and battery issues remain a concern, as well as keyboard lag or freezing up. This is definitely an issue that's still there for many people, whether it's in notes or something else. So if you're typing fast, this is a new note on iOS 26.2. Sometimes autocorrect is off. Sometimes it doesn't register touches properly. Again, this seems to be an issue on older devices more than newer, but it's definitely an issue that's still there, and still there on 26.3 as well. Also, RAM management is an issue where it too quickly closes out of different apps and has to reload them. I've seen this over and over for sure on this version. And other than the clock issue with the alarm not sounding, I've seen some timers disappear. My wife in particular has had them just disappear. She'll set a timer. Maybe she's cooking dinner or doing something else, and all of a sudden the timer just goes away. We're not sure why. We've checked it a couple times, and it seems to be an issue. So let me know if you're experiencing that, or if it's just something specific on my wife's phone. Also, CarPlay is still an issue. On my phone, it works fine once it connects, disconnects, and then connects again. I've seen this over and over in my BMW, for example. It just connects, it'll start working, and then all of a sudden the music will stop playing, it'll disconnect, reconnect on its own, and then it's fine from there on out until the next time I get in the car and the system repeats that. So there's definitely an issue there that needs to be fixed, along with the ever-present wallpaper bug. So if we pull down here, you'll see it's nice and saturated, swipe up, and it desaturates just a little bit. It seems to be less noticeable nowadays, but it's definitely still there. When it comes to iOS 26.3 Beta 2, well, I use that for a week as well, and the experience is a little bit better, a little smoother. Everything seems to be a little bit better here and there. The top things people said was that it fixed CarPlay completely. It works properly for most people, but there's always some that still have issues. Thermal management improved a lot for most people, animations are more fluid even on older devices, and standby battery is improved as well. Also, people mentioned that Face ID works better, not just in the lock screen, but also on third-party apps as well. The number one issue I'm hearing about iOS 26.3 Beta 2 is random resprings, where maybe you'll go into music and something will crash and then reboot. I've had that happen multiple times going into mail for whatever reason, but sometimes you'll just go into an application, close out, the phone will respring, and then you're back to your home screen or lock screen. The keyboard input lag is still there, like I mentioned, and other people have said that the lock screen will sometimes reset the font. For example, if we pull down here, sometimes the lock screen font where we have it here will reset to maybe the smaller size or something they didn't set to begin with. Notifications are not consistent for some, and there's again some visual bugs with liquid glass. The reminders alarms are sometimes not working, but again, I would check your sound settings for that and make sure that's not causing it. But the overall experience is quite good. Before we talk about performance on older devices, another bug you'll see is I was able to AirDrop with iOS 18.7.3 to the iPhone 11 for this wallpaper, but I wasn't able to do it on the other devices, 26.2 and 26.3. It's still sharing right now. They're on the same account. As far as these devices, this one is not, but it still can't see it even though it's shared with everyone. So that's an odd bug. It's not showing on 26.2, even though we have 26.2 on this device. Many people are saying it's slow. It's definitely heating up quite a bit, but it doesn't seem to be very slow compared to what I would expect for this device. You'll see it's not going to be as smooth as the newest ones, but it's okay. However, based on most people's experience, the number one complaint is micro stutters. You'll see that throughout, depending on the version. It is getting smoother with 26.3 on the right, for example, but in general, it's just an odd experience. So you can see a little chart here based off of your comments in the community poll. The iPhone 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max typically seems to be a good experience. 16 to 16E say it's okay, but there's reports of taps not being registered and failed efficiency or just things not working properly. iPhone 14 and 15 generally are saying it's a bad experience with it being stuttery and just sort of laggy in general. And iPhone 11 and 12 users are saying it's poor, where it's just sort of slowed down in general. Now, again, like I mentioned on the iPhone 11 running the latest version, it's okay, but it's not going to be as fast as the most recent phones, of course. When it comes to thermals, let's run benchmarks so we can take a look there, see what we've got on 26.3 Beta 2 after a week or so, and once we get about halfway through, we'll check the overall thermal signature and the temperature. So we're about halfway done running benchmarks, and you can see on the thermal camera, the iPhone 17 Pro Max running iOS 26.3 Beta 2 is around 33.8 degrees Celsius at the hottest point, and then on the iPhone Air running 26.2, or around 39.5 degrees or even closer to 40 degrees Celsius on the iPhone Air. So that's typical for the iPhone Air. Everything's right where you would expect it. Benchmarks completed, and you can see the overall scores. On the iPhone 17 Pro Max with iOS 26.3 Beta 2, we have 3,780 for single-core, 9,566 for multi-core. This is well within the margin of error, but I've definitely seen better scores as well, depending on the multi-core or single-core, depending on when it's run and what version it's using and everything else. We can typically get over 10,000, usually on public versions after indexing is completed. Now let's go ahead and take a look at battery. First, we'll take a look at battery life on my iPhone Air. I've been running it full time with iOS 26.2. Battery health is at 100% with 68 cycles. And if we take a look at the battery itself, this battery is not great compared to other phones, of course. But today, you'll see I've used it for 3 hours of screen active time, 1 hour and 32 minutes of screen idle time, and used 50% of the battery. If we take a look at the day before, 3 hours and 44 minutes of screen active time, 2 hours and 42 minutes of screen idle time with 93% used. I'm finding about 4 to 4.5 hours of screen on time is normal for the iPhone Air for me without using an external battery or something like that. Some people are seeing much better battery life though. When it comes to iOS 26.3 Beta 2, let's take a look at Nate's, who set his battery life in as well. So thanks to Nate for sending this in. This is on an iPhone 17 Pro Max running iOS 26.3 Beta 2 with 100% battery health and 60 cycles. You'll see he had 4 hours and 13 minutes of screen active time, 9 hours and 2 minutes of screen idle time, and used 57% of the battery. He also sent in another day where he had 5 hours and 4 minutes of screen active time and 12 hours and 4 minutes of screen idle time using 59% of the battery. So maybe you'd get around 9 hours of screen on time with normal use, which seems to be about right for the 17 Pro Max, anywhere between 9 to 12 hours depending on what you're doing. If you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.3 betas, well, at this point, if you've waited this long, I'd probably wait for the next update, especially if it's iOS 26.3 RC that we expect in a few days. If it is the RC, that should be the stable version that they're planning to release to the public unless there's additional issues, then you can try it out there. But if you do want to upgrade, since it is a little bit smoother, make sure you have a backup and just know that you need a computer if you want to downgrade. Now, as far as the experience and what you have to say, let's take a look at some of your comments. Perfection 100 said, I upgraded from iOS 18.6.2 to 26.2 last week on iPhone 13, 93% battery health. Great battery life and performance. It's even more stable than 18.6.2. The liquid glass looks great along with other features. J Muse said, iPhone 13 on iOS 26.2, there are micro stutters and choppy animations from time to time, and battery life still needs to be improved, but other than that, I'm happy with it. David Windsor 0703 said, iOS 26.2 has been out for so long, and the main issue we still face is battery. It didn't last as long as it used to be, heating up, keyboard bugs, misclicking is still an issue. Bugs aren't fixed in 26.2. It's an embarrassment for Apple to focus on features instead of bugs. What a shame. Nate W1302 said, I'm using iOS 26.3 Beta 2 on my iPhone 17 Pro Max, and it's still the same as last week. Battery is okay overall, not really any keyboard bugs, but the main issue is the constant resprings. I usually get 3 or 4 per day just by opening an app. Still better than 26.2 overall, but there's plenty of issues that still need to be addressed and fixed. Caracas 7326 says, on iOS 26.3 Beta 2 on iPhone 13 Pro. Many improvements as far as battery life goes. Stuttering is present, but still way less. Still needs some refinement, but overall, good experience. Upgrading to a new iPhone 17 base model soon. Really hyped about that. When it comes to storage, let's go ahead and check that, see if anything's changed. I wouldn't expect that it has very much, but we'll go to General and then iPhone storage. On the left is 26.2, on the right is 26.3 Beta 2, and you'll see it's taking up about 3 gigabytes more thanks to Apple Intelligence. This has been the case for me for quite some time, so basically the exact same that we had before, with iOS taking up a little bit more on 26.3 Beta 2, but not by much. When it comes to system data, it's going up and down. Sometimes it's over 20 gigabytes, sometimes it's down to 1 gigabyte. It just depends, but I don't pay attention to it as it will vary up and down as needed. With iOS 26.2, it's the liquid glass crisis. It gets a C- still as far as grades, and iOS 26.2 was meant to be the polish update for the new design language, but for many it has felt like change for change's sake. While it introduced the highly anticipated liquid glass customization, letting users adjust opacity, and meaningful security patches for zero-day flaws, the technical foundation still seems to be shaky. The comments in the community poll is split based on device, where new iPhone 17 users generally find it modern, where the iOS 18 holdouts find it as a regression in reliability and stability and other problems as well. With iOS 26.3 Beta 2, it's the housekeeping effect where Apple continues to fix issues. It gets a B as far as the grade, and iOS 26.3 Beta 2 is basically a triage update. Apple has clearly shifted focus away from flashy new features to address the thermal and performance complaints of 26.2. For those brave enough to run the beta, the experience is really a one step forward and one step back scenario. The phone runs cooler and smoother, but it crashes more often with more resprings everywhere else. So this is something they still need to address and hopefully is fixed by the RC in public release of 26.3. So that's everything with iOS 26.3 Beta 2 and iOS 26.2. Hopefully this week we finally get some sort of update that addresses issues, whether it's iOS 26.2.1 or iOS 26.3 RC. I'm really looking forward to see what the final version is like, and then of course the new Siri 2.0 update with iOS 26.4. Let me know how iOS is going for you in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.